All right, welcome back to this special bonus lecture. Between the online and the in-person and the videos and the PowerPoints, somehow this information kind of got lost in the shuffle, but it's too important to be lost and it gets its own special presentation. So let's make sure we pay attention and let's get into it. All right, we're going to talk today about the Emancipation Proclamation. It's very important and I want you to read it. We're also going to talk about African Americans in the Union and then different divisions in the South. All right, so what is the Emancipation Proclamation? We will talk about it. What are the economic impacts of the war? It's better to be in the North. They had more stuff to begin with. And then why are draft laws needed? People are not wanting, they don't want this war anymore, and that desertion is a problem. Here's where we are on the timeline. Okay, pause the video, read the Emancipation Proclamation, and then let's get into it when you get back. Okay, so hopefully you read the Emancipation Proclamation. Now let's talk about it. Lincoln frees the slaves, but only in the states that are in rebellion. So this is the classic criticism of the Emancipation Proclamation. Where Lincoln has the power to free the slaves, he does nothing. Where Lincoln doesn't have the power to free the slaves, he frees the slaves. Does that make sense? He could have freed the slaves in the border states, but he didn't want to do that. He fears that'll push them back over to the South. So it's more of a gesture than it is anything legally binding, but it is powerful. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about what it does. Is it changes what the war is about. And now it's a moral cause. And this is going to keep Europe from wanting to come in on the side of the South. And it's no longer just about states' rights. It's also about something being morally wrong that must be taken out of the United States. So how does it impact the slaves? It frees very few. But it does, like I said earlier, turn it into a humanitarian war effort. Okay. African Americans are going to help the Union. Let's think about different ways that they could help. Okay, in the North, they'll volunteer and they'll become part of the Army. In the South, they can sabotage or refuse to work or things like that. And so this is going to be a huge advantage to the North. Extra risk as well. If you're an African American and you get caught, you're not just a prisoner of war. You could be put back into servitude. And so they're risking, you're always risking your life, but they have even more risk.
When the Civil War began in April of 1861, it was not legal for men of African descent to join the Federal Army. African Americans were serving in the Federal Navy, but they could not join the Federal Army. It was not until July 17, 1862, when Congress passed and President Lincoln signed into law the Militia Act, that African Americans were allowed to join the Federal Army. In 1862, regiments were organized in Kansas, South Carolina, and Louisiana. These regiments would be engaged in mostly small unit operations and engaged in combat in 1862. However, it was not until January 1, 1863, in the Emancipation Proclamation, that President Lincoln issued an order to his field commanders to receive men of African descent into all armed services of the United States. The Bureau of United States Colored Troops was established on May 22, 1863, with General Order 143. Active recruiting of African Americans began on a national scale in the South, in Union-occupied territories, and in the North. In the Western Theater, African Americans would fight in May of 1863 in the Battle of Port Hudson, the first major battle in which African American soldiers are engaged. In the Eastern Theater, African American soldiers would prove their mettle in the battle at Fort Wagner. The 54th Massachusetts would lead the assault, the failed Union assault on Fort Wagner. African American soldiers by the spring of 1864 would become a major part of those Union operations in Virginia. Under General Ulysses S. Grant, they would fight in the battles at Petersburg, and they would go on to earn distinction with 15 medals of honor being earned in the Virginia theater. And at Newmarket Heights In September of 1864, they would capture the closest point captured to Richmond to that date. And they would go on as members of the 25th Army Corps, the only Army Corps in American history to capture Richmond, Virginia. African American soldiers would serve throughout the rest of the war, earning the respect of their generals. An Inspector General report that inspected a regiment out of Mississippi, the 3rd United States Colored Cavalry, reported that the superior status of that regiment was a reason why Negroes should serve in the active service. It was their service in the Civil War that leads to their enlistment in the regular army. In 1866, 6 regiments of African descent soldiers were established in the regular army, 4 infantry regiments and 2 cavalry regiments. When the army was downsized in 1869, 2 infantry regiments would remain and 2 cavalry regiments, and these soldiers would go on to earn fame as Buffalo Soldiers.